Hey everybody, my name is Dave Jackson, and you're listening to Tales from the Backlog, which is a video games podcast where I bring in guests to talk about the games we play. Elden Ring month continues with today's episode, and I have a very special guest. My guest today is returning from two previous episodes of the show, right? From Hades and Hollow Knight, Jim Rodeman.
Hello, good to be back.
Yeah, welcome back, dude.
Thanks for having me, man. Always a pleasure. I am yours whenever you need me. That's super. All right, let's keep moving.
No, we're keeping that in the episode.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Like you said, Jim was a guest on the previous episodes of the show about Hades and Hollow Knight, both very, very good episodes. Highly recommend you go check those episodes out if you haven't already. But like I said, today, Elden Ring month continues, and Elden Ring month is coming to a close with the final episode, which is the bosses tier list. So
Dun, dun,
Jim and I have a tier list on tiermaker.com. We're going to run through it. We are going to rank all of the bosses in Elden Ring, all of the bosses that say great enemy or above. We're not going to rank, random field bosses or things in catacombs and stuff like that, because then we would be here for 6.5 hours. So I count 33 bosses on this tier list. So that is going to be plenty. There are some that are not on here that I would like to talk about. Like there's no tree avatars. There's no Knights Cavalry on here. But, I think we have enough to talk about here. So you can find the link to the tier list in the show notes if you want to make a tier list of your own and share it with us. We would appreciate that. You can share it in the Discord or on social media with the Tales from the Backlog accounts. Also, in this episode today, we are going to go full spoilers right from the beginning. So if you haven't played Elden Ring, or if you haven't finished Elden Ring, you can listen up to the point where we're talking about things that you have completed, or if you haven't played it at all, just know this is full spoilers. And I've kind of ordered the bosses in a semi-chronological order, so maybe if you're halfway through the game, you can listen to half of the tier list if you want to, and come back when you're done. I think Jim and I would both recommend this game.
Yes, agreed.
On my tier list, I have rankings of S, A, B, C, D, and then instead of F, I have the Bed of Chaos tier. Just a shout out to the eternally worst boss fight in the entire FromSoft catalog, the Bed of Chaos. So those are my tiers. And before we get into the tier list, since Jim, you haven't been a part of Elden Ring month so far, and we have not talked about From Software on this show together. We talked about Hollow Knight and Hades. I want to give you a chance to share with the listeners your, personal history with From Software, your history with Elden Ring, and stuff like that.
Yeah, thanks, man. And I think that that's actually important because unlike you, I come in probably with some pretty naive views when it comes to this world. So introduction to FromSoft games was actually through you. You told me 100 years ago to play Dark Souls. You said it was the best RPG you had played in quite a while. Mm-hmm. And like a good friend, I said, great. And then I forgot
and then
all
never
about
touched
it.
Yeah.
just proceeded to. So then, I finish grad school and everything, and I'm running around at a GameStop, and this was a purchase, Dark Souls 1, Uncharted 2, Persona 5, and oh my gosh, there was one other game as well. And I bought all 4 of these games on PlayStation 3, or for PlayStation 3 back in 2017. I probably bought them for less than $50. And I proceeded to play all of them but Dark Souls. So then, the barren wasteland that was COVID hits, and I had nothing to do and I was stuck inside. So I had another friend as well that was telling me, you own Dark Souls and you haven't played it. So I played that first one start to finish, Dark Souls 1 on the PlayStation 3. I played it without any online play because they weren't offering it anymore. And I played it with no DLC. And I thought that first game is a masterpiece. I think that every pixel in that game is lovingly placed, and I can't speak any higher of that game. I have then proceeded to play no other From Software games until Elden Ring.
And so, how did you find Elden Ring then? Since you went straight from Dark Souls 1 to Elden Ring, you're jumping ahead like miles in complexity and game speed and all these things, I think.
Light years. And maybe you can weigh in on a couple of these things. From my understanding, this is maybe not exactly, but for the most part, this is like essentially the Dark Souls 3 engine, correct?
It feels really similar to Dark Souls 3. Yeah.
Okay, because I was used to kind of the clunkiness. I thought that this game, I mean, I sunk over 160 hours into it within probably a 1 month span. I was texting you like the whole time.
Yep.
So I clearly loved this game. That doesn't mean that it is not without flaws. I do have my own particular issues with it. And so my own personal history with it, I think, is going to leapfrog into my next point, which is I played Dark Souls 1 as a strength faith build. So when I started this game, I wanted to go the total opposite direction. So my goal was
Weakness
dexterity,
and
intelligence.
blasphemy, the total
That's right.
opposite.
I was a satanic worshiper who died in one hit to everything. It was great. But so I went Dex Intelligence, which then turned into actually probably just Intelligence.
Yeah.
And I think what you'll see is that the way that my tier list is set up is towards the end of the game, once you start to unlock the Kamehameha intelligence moves, my boss tier list just becomes a whole lot of B's and A's because this game plays fundamentally differently depending upon what build you're going for. And when you are a turret, that kind of removes a lot of dynamics from this.
Yeah. I also played as a Dex intelligence, mostly Dex though. Like I used spells sometimes, but it was like I'll shoot a couple of spells off, but then when something closes the distance, I fight melee. And then for a couple bosses on this list, I had to go all melee and just abandon magic for the most part because they get up in your face. And so I think we're going to have a couple of like similar experiences with some of these bosses then. I think this game, I think you and I both played it kind of the easier way. And as I said in previous episodes, I feel absolutely no shame in that. And if anyone is listening and is going to try and guilt me into feeling shame about the way I play, that will not happen. I do think though that if you play this game as a strength dude with a two-handed weapon and no shield, I think this game is way harder than the way that I played it. So that kind of leads me into like a couple of like things I want to get out in front before we get into the tier list. I played this with this build that used some ranged attacks, some up close attacks. I used bleed a lot with my my katana build and stuff like that. Bleed is excellent in this game. I used my spirit ashes against most bosses to win. I would usually fight a boss one or two times without it, and if I couldn't beat it, then I was like, okay, I've seen this boss. Let's break out the mimic tier. Let's get on with the game because, as I've said before, the bosses are good in FromSoft games. They're fun, but they're not why I'm playing the game. I want to explore the levels. That's my shit. So a boss that takes longer than like 20 to 30 minutes is frustrating for me at that point. I don't really get any pleasure out of most bosses that are like, oh, this took me 5 hours to beat. I'm well past the point of frustration if I ever get there, with very, very few exceptions throughout the series.
You're in good company here. I think, and again, I missed all the other days. I've never seen Dark Souls 2, 3, what have you. But gone are the days of I'm going to lose to Ornstein and Smo 50 times. And instead, yeah, I agree with you. I'd walk into those rooms and it's like, okay, I lost to you once. Pop the Wondrous Physic. Here comes the Mimic Tier. I'm gonna throw in a Rune Arc or maybe a couple other consumables, and I'm just gonna beat you. I'm just gonna numbers you down, basically.
Yep, and I definitely feel like some of these bosses feel like they are made to use Spirit Ashes. Like some of them are, frankly, I think too hard to fight by yourself, and From Software put in the Spirit Ashes in the game, and then I think they designed some bosses with the intention that you will be using them or will be summoning another player or something like that. So again, I don't feel bad about my summoning practices because I think From Software wants you to do it.
That's why it's in the game.
Yeah, let's get into the tier list here.
Let's do this.
Oh, tarnished. In search of the Elden Ring. Emboldened by the flame of ambition.
So we have 33 bosses on this tier list, and we're going to attempt to get through this in a timely manner, but, this is Tales from the Backlog. That doesn't happen very often. So I have ordered these kind of chronologically again. There are going to be some things that are not on this tier list, but I looked through it a couple times before, and most of the heavy hitters are here. I'm pretty happy with this list. So starting off with the first major boss in the game, which is Margit the Fell Omen. Jim, where do you have Margit?
So no joke. I actually think that Margit deserves to be at bare minimum A tier. I actually, in my tier, am probably going to go ahead and put him all the way up in S because I think he's a great introduction to this game. I think it's a great moment to just be like, oh wow, I got stomped. And then he's a very dynamic boss fight, making all the different changes within what his weapon is. And he's got the wonderful thing that I think is a From Software. Well, it's not a From Software thing, but From Software does it really well, where when you reach kind of the halfway point in the boss battle, there's almost like a heat up mode. And his heat up is he busts out this huge hammer and just starts laying into you. And I thought he was great. So personally, for me, he's probably going into S tier.
Okay, I have him in A tier. I agree, he's really, really good. Obviously, I got kind of frustrated before I figured out that you're supposed to die to him at the beginning. You're probably not going to be good enough to beat him. Once I realized that and was like, okay, I'm going to go explore for 30 hours and then come back. After I came back and I was on his level, DPS wise and stuff like that, I really, really like this fight. I like his moveset. I like that the second phase is basically the same, but with, that hammer, that big jumping hammer attack, which is the easiest attack to dodge and punish on. But all of his other attacks are basically the same with some elemental damage and stuff like that, which is how I like multi-phase boss fights. So I don't know if he's he's really hard. That's why it's the only thing keeping me from saying he's an excellent tutorial early game boss, because he's so hard. He would be in the top 5 hardest bosses in Dark Souls 3, I think, and he's the first one in Elden Ring. But I do really like it. So A tier for Margit.
I think one of the things you brought up real quick, and I just want to touch on it, is one of the things that I think Elden Ring does great from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. And that is, you meet Margit, you're level, I don't know, maybe 15, and you get like crushed by him.
Mm-hmm.
But Elden Ring, grinding isn't really grinding in Elden Ring, because instead you are always off discovering something new, getting some incremental upgrade. So grinding in Elden Ring, you can do that just by exploring the world.
Right.
And like Limgrave in and of itself, you can 100% beat Limgrave and be walking out of there at level like, probably 30 or 40. So to then go back into Margit and be like, you're not so tough. It's something that this game does consistently good from start to finish. And Margit, to me, he's the one that introduces that idea, which is, again, why I haven't placed so high. But yeah.
I agree. Margit's good. Next up is to the right of the starting area. You go into the lake next to the chapel that you come out of, or next to the building you come out of, and you fight the first dragon in the game, and it's Flying Dragon Agil. And I think this is going to kind of be a proxy for all the other dragon fights in the game. There's 2 others on this tier list, but like the random field dragons are not on here. But they're all basically the same. So where do you have Agil, Jim?
The first time, so I never did Dark Souls 3. I think there's a dragon in that game. First time I did that dragon in that swamp, I was blown away just with the fact that, a video game captured a dragon fight better than Skyrim. Not that Skyrim's like the one to beat necessarily, but I really liked it the first time, and then the next 4 or 5 times that you do it, it's kind of just the same battle over and over again.
Yeah,
to the
with
point where when you're
different elements and a couple different attacks, but it's mostly the same fight. Yeah,
no, you're right. So like the blizzard one, okay, I can't see very well, and there's a lake of ice. You are correct. By Ronnie's quest line, you're fighting 3 in one place at one time, and so by then, like, I was kind of a little bit over it. So the first time I met it, so honestly, the first dragon, A, all the others probably a B.
Okay, I have Agil in the A tier as well. I really like dragon fights in this game. The only reason they don't go in S tier is because they feel like they just go on for a little while, and the strategy for them, while it's really fun to ride around on your horse and fight them, the strategy is still basically just like ride by and chop at their legs and then run out and then ride by again and chop at their legs. The spectacle of them is really cool, and especially Agil doing big fire breath attacks like burning the trees. The trees are falling down. That was a super cool thing. And Elden Ring has the best dragon fights of any FromSoft game, I think. There's a couple I like Calamite a lot, and I like Sin in Dark Souls 2, but I don't really care for the other dragon fights in the series. But Elden Ring, they're all at least pretty fun, and I think it's mostly because you can ride your horse around. So
sure. Torrent cannot be like Torrent is S tier for sure. Controlling that horse feels amazing.
Yeah, and we'll mention Torrent a few more times throughout this list because it does become like an integral part of some boss strategy. So
there's a few more bosses that feel dragon-y. We'll get to those though.
Yeah. Next up, we have this is the boss of Castle Morn in the Weeping Peninsula, and it is the Leonine Misbegotten. So this is the one that gives you that Game of Thrones sword after you beat it, the grafted great sword or whatever it's called. So where do you have this one?
I actually quite liked this guy. To me, it does feel a bit like a duel. I actually started the game again after I beat it, and got as far through as beating, I think, just Limgrave and getting into the lakes. Where I was just a brute, just a strength based endurance health. That's it. Just
Hmm.
those three stats. And some of these bosses that we will talk about, where it feels a little bit more like an on par duel, I thought were a ton of fun. So this guy to me, and all the subsequent versions of him that you fight thereafter, were all A tier from start to finish.
Okay. I have this one in B, and I like that. I feel this is the first boss that you fight that is really like a um, use your shield counter. Like, it's kind of like almost a tutorial for that one specific mechanic. But I don't like this boss a lot. Like, I put it in B because it's not bad. I just don't love it. He's one of those bosses that has too much stamina, I think. It's too relentless. It never really cools down. So the only way I could consistently like avoid damage was to block, use the shield counter, and then like run away, basically. So yeah, not a huge fan, but not terrible. B, I guess. And then when it keeps popping up as a regular enemy, I tended to have trouble with them out in the field because, again, they're relentless. They never stop attacking. And usually there's other enemies around then. So, yeah, B for me.
Gotcha.
Next up, we have Godric the Grafted, who is the boss of Stormvale Castle. And Godric is a very funny boss. I really enjoyed this. Where do you have Godric, Jim?
I like Godric. I mean, not necessarily spoilers for the whole episode, but I liked all your shard bearers.
Right.
Your rune lord, whatever. Yes. So I liked him. I thought he was A. I liked his start. I liked battling him with Nephili. Um,
Nefali, yeah.
Nephali, and I liked his when all of a sudden he gets the dragon head.
Hmm.
It really kind of changes the dynamic of that and keeps it very interesting. As stupid as it is, the fact that his wrist could just become the neck of this dragon mouth. I thought it was great. So
Yeah, I have Godric in S. I fucking love this fight. I think it's one of the most fair fights in the entire game. And it, as a result, he has a bunch of moves, but he has a bunch of big tells. He never really like surprises you with any moves like out of nowhere with no windups or anything like that. I just thought this is a really good fight. And then, yeah, that cutscene in the middle of it where he cuts his arm off and grafts on a dragon head. Um, that's From Software being goofy and weird, and I love it when From Software gets weird because they do it so well. So I actually enjoyed this fight so much. I put my summon sign down and I helped like 20 people beat it because I just like never got tired of doing this fight. So
nice.
S tier. Also, I love after you beat him, the guy in his boss arena that's just like stomping on his head, talking shit about how Godric isn't shit and stuff like that. I love that.
He's the best character in the game.
Yeah. So Godric's my first S tier. Next up, we're going into the Rea Lucaria Academy, and the first boss in there is the Red Wolf of Radagon. Where do you have this, Jim?
Ooh, all right. I don't like the Red Wolf, and I like him even less the more he shows up throughout the game.
Mm-hmm.
He's in C tier for me. So I think what you'll notice with my list is it probably seems like I'm being very forgiving. All of these bosses I think are great. I really do. I don't know if I'm going to place any that are like crazy low, but this one I'm not the biggest fan of. He can jump too far, and when he's not in those tiny confined rooms, he will launch far away from you and then all of a sudden just start firing a bunch of missiles at you.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing it very fast. I just wasn't a big fan. C level for me.
Yeah, I'm putting this one in D. I don't like this fight at all. The one, oddly, the one in the academy, the one that's an actual boss fight, is the easiest one, I think. The ones that are out in the
Agreed.
field are really fucking hard. And it's
Yeah.
just because, like you said, they have a lot more space and they're just zooming around outside. Um, yeah, I don't like it. Its magic attacks are really strong and its melee attacks are the same wolf style melee attacks that we've seen ever since Sif. So
Hmm.
yeah, this is D. I don't know how many are going to end up down in D. I don't even know if any are going to end up in the Bed of Chaos tier. But this one is like, if we're just doing like bottom three, like I fucking hate this one. The Red Wolf is for sure in there.
Yeah, he bothered me a lot.
Yep. Next up, though, is Renala, Queen of the Full Moon. Where do you have Renala?
So she's interesting. I'm not putting her in Bed of Chaos tier, but she's a little bit of chaosy in the sense that the first part of her boss battle is like a puzzle. You have to run around the room and find all the girls that are actually holding the spell at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And the fourth or fifth time that I had to fight her, that honestly started to get a little frustrating. But I do like that you can essentially just out damage that part. The second stage of her where she's like floating around with the moon in the background, I thought was a little bit better. But whatever she can cast at that time is random. So
Yeah.
occasionally it's like, oh, all right, I can handle this, and then like my second time, I was like, oh, that's a troll, and I just got like smashed.
I have Renala in the A tier. I really like this fight. Um, it seems
Yeah,
like it seems like an evolution of the Deacons of the Deep fight in Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 has a boss fight that's pretty similar to Phase 1 of Renala. But Renala is way more fun because you have like these kids in school robes throwing books at you and you're going around and just thrashing them, and she falls down. And then her second phase is like one of the most like stunningly like beautiful arenas in the entire game. Like I was
for
like,
sure.
"Oh, this is like ROM in Bloodborne, but like way more like visually appealing." And then so I beat her my first try
Ooh,
when I was going through the game. This was even before I started using Spirit Ashes a bunch. I just had I was using Katana and Bleed, and those just kind of mess her up. When I was helping people with this fight, I didn't even realize that, like, because she uses Spirit Ashes too, or she summons, ghost things. I didn't realize that she could summon in a bunch of, like, really hard stuff, like a dragon and stuff like that. And in my fight, she summoned in 3 wolves. I killed them really quickly, and then I killed her. But then I was helping a friend, and she summoned in a bunch of stuff, and I was like, holy shit, this can actually be really hard. But I didn't have any really tough experience, so she goes in A, and I like her as a character, and yeah, just a fun fight. And it's one of the few like 2-phase boss fights where the phases are very different from each other that I actually really like.
yeah, and you're right. The second stage is like strikingly beautiful. I didn't give her a ranking. I'd probably put her in A. Low A though. She's a little variable again with those some of the spirit ashes that she can bring in. It's just like, oh, that's good, and then you die.
Yeah.
So,
All right, next up, we have one of the top most controversial bosses in the entire game. It is Star Scourge Radahn. Where do you have Radahn, Jim?
okay, I think the more unique that you could get the boss fight, which a lot of these, the big boss fights are, the better they are. Um, you're going to hear me complain about a tactic that Radahn uses later in the game as a reason why I didn't like a boss. I loved Radahn. I thought he was great. I loved the idea that you had all these summon signs, and so like you could just bring like 6 other people into the battle, and you just all went and dogpiled on him. I think bosses are somewhat cheap when they disappear from the battlefield and then show up with an atomic bomb blast. But other than that, I actually really liked him from start to finish. He's a very easy A tier for me. You could probably make an argument for him to go above that. He's so memorable. I loved it.
Yep, I have him in S. And did you beat Radon before the patch that made him easier?
Yes, I'm an OG with that. Although I wouldn't know what that means. He seemed to me like that would be hard no matter what.
Yeah, there are a couple attacks that like could stun lock you and just kill you as a result, or just straight up kill you in one hit, and they kind of nerf the damage on those, which is good. I'm in favor of that. I beat him before the patch too, but then when the patch came out, there were a bunch of people on Twitter that were like, no, fuck that. I beat him without the patch. You have to too. It's the same people that say like, I paid my student loans. Everyone else has to also. It's the exact same type of person. I have him in S. Like you said, dude, the spectacle, the arena that you're fighting in is so good. And then Radon's story, if you dig into the story a little bit, is excellent. Like the reason you're fighting him is one of the coolest reasons you're fighting any boss in any game in FromSoft stuff. Usually it's just like you go into a room and the reason you're fighting this thing is because they're in the room and you need to get past that room. But Radon's he's optional, so you don't have to fight him. But Radon's is really cool how, as a result of his fight with Millennia, he's this hollowed out husk, and his friends are throwing a big festival for someone to come give him a warrior's death. And the story with his little tiny ass horse, that's really funny too. Yeah. And I mean, the fight is fun. I had a lot of fun in the fight, like you said, riding in with all your buddies, summoning Patches, and as soon as you summon in Patches, it feels like Patches just takes one look at the battlefield and he's like, nope, and then he leaves. It's just an excellent fight. So S.
I killed Patches. I killed him. So
nice.
I've never seen that.
No less than he deserves. I don't blame you. Patches is a dick.
Fair enough.
Next up on the tier list, we have after you beat Radon, if you go back to his the arena before his, like, where the crier is and where you met all your friends, there's a boss fight there, and it is the Crucible Knight and Misbegotten Warrior double fight. Where do you have this one?
Okay, so this is probably a B, maybe a C. It might even be lower than that. I started to really dislike that halfway through this game. All of a sudden, it was like, I don't know, just throw two of them at the person. Crucible Knights are difficult from the start of the game till the end of the game. Mm-hmm. And I just told you that I liked the Misbegotten Warrior, but when I have to focus on two of them at once, it just became too much, and it really started to bother me because this game does this not just a couple times, like it does it a lot. So probably a C.
Yeah, I'm putting it in D. I think Crucible Knights are really hard by themselves, and I think Misbegotten Warriors are fairly hard by themselves. Putting them together, you're right, it does feel like they're like, we need a boss fight, you know. Hey Fred, we need a boss fight by 4 p.m. today. And he's like, okay, Crucible Knight, and we haven't put a Crucible Knight in Caelid yet, and Misbegotten Warrior, yeah, sure, and then we'll delay one of them spawning by 30 seconds, and then that's okay, sounds good.
Great, we'll feed your family.
Yeah, yeah. I came back to this later in the game, used my Mimic tier when both of us were leveled up pretty high, and thrashed this. But I don't think it's a good idea from the beginning. Crucible Knights are just so fucking hard. I had trouble with them the whole game.
Yeah, start to finish. The first time you meet one in that Everjail by Stormvale, to the moment that you're like running into them in the wild. Every time I'd see one, it was like, oh, God, this is gonna suck.
Yeah, I just ended up running past them later in the game. Like when you see them underground and stuff, like I just, stealthed or just ran past them until they got tired of chasing me. So
It's how you know you got a good boss fight.
yeah. Next up, so we're going up onto the Altus Plateau, and one way to get up there is by taking these kind of like, what's the word? Can't think of it.
The lift?
Well, there's the lift, and then there's another side entrance where you're going up like this scaffolding through these caves.
There was
and
a
stuff
dam.
Like
Isn't it a dam?
Is it a dam?
Or maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe not.
You're going up these ledges on the side of a cliff, and there's a boss in there called the magma worm Makar. So, and then we can just roll in all magma worms because they're all the same. There's several of them. So where do you put this one?
The first time I ran into a magma, I beat every magma worm but the last one on my very first try, because I would sort of stumble into the arena and be like, oh, I got to fight one of these now. This is probably one of the first bosses where my build really dictated how I feel about the boss fight, because I remember getting walloped by this guy and running out of my flasks to just like kiting him with glintstone pebble. So I think the magma worms are honestly like a C, but I don't remember ever like getting really dynamic about the boss fight. I think I was always just backtracking and glintstone pebbling them. So that's probably pretty lame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to put these in C also. I don't think they're very special. I think most of them are fairly easy, except there's one in a catacomb that it might give you the Moon Veil or something like that. It's in Caelid or in like a tunnel, and it's just the smallest room for a boss that big. And that fight really sucks because you have almost nowhere to go. You can literally like walk in the door and it charges at you and just keeps headbutting you against the door until you're dead. But I'm putting them in C. They're fine. They're not terrible. The only one that I think is terrible is because the room is too small, not because the boss is bad. I tended to use ranged magic I was using the Moon Veil for most of the game too, using the weapon art, which has a bunch of range to it. So C, I don't really have a lot else to say. Next up, though, is one that we might have things to say, the Godskin Noble. So we're going to do the Volcano Manor bosses now, and the Godskin Noble is in there. So this is the big fat one. If you lost track, the Godskin Apostle is the skinny one with the extendable neck. This is the big fat one. So Godskin Noble.
Yeah, Smo of your Ornstein and Smo guys here. I didn't like either of these guys very much. They both kept things interesting because there's like always something new that they seem to be doing. But I was not particularly impressed by anything that they were like individually doing, be it stretching way too far or rolling around like a Snorlax. So B, he's good.
I'm gonna put this one in C. I don't like this fight at all. But so it would go in D. I don't like this fight. I think that they're really tanky. The one thing I have heard is that you can put them to sleep like really easily if you use sleep arrows or sleep darts or a sleep bomb or something like that. They just go right out, which is a cool thing about Elden Ring, how status effects are really good against almost everything.
Agreed.
And this one has some high comedy with its rolling attack, like its fucking graveler rollout attack. I think that's really funny, but it's not very fun to fight. So I'm putting it in C and saving more thoughts for later. Because if you've played the game, you know what's coming up later. Next up, Elimer of the Briar.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to turn this over to you to start while I figure this out.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say. A lot of people have thoughts one way or another on this fight. I don't remember it very well. I mean, I remember fighting him, but I killed him extremely quickly using whatever spirit ash I had and whatever weapon I was using at the time. Don't quite remember. I probably had Moonveil by that point, maybe the Mimic tier, but I killed this guy so quickly, I don't really know much about him. So I'm going to put him in B. He looks cool. His weapon is cool. It's like a, fucking evil barbed wire looking thing. I'm going to put him in B because of that, but I don't have any real thoughts about this guy. I killed him in less than 15 seconds.
I actually looking him up now. I do remember the boss fight. You said something that I actually agree with a ton, and that's like, do you remember him versus how hard was he to defeat? Because he's one of your mid-game bosses, and by the time you unlock mid-game, you can go to anywhere underground or like 6 different, areas above ground or whatever. So if you do everything, depending upon when you fight this guy, I'm pretty sure I was crazy over leveled and walked in and, like you said, beat him in 15 seconds. So I'm looking at this. I remember the arena and everything. I guess I'd say B because, like, he doesn't stand out to me.
Yeah. And it's a shame. It's also a shame that, like, I had a thought a couple days ago. I was thinking about, like, getting ready to do this podcast. I was like, I would like to go fight some, because there's a couple on here that I killed so quickly, I don't really have any thoughts about. And I would like to go fight them again, but Elden Ring doesn't let you rematch bosses. Dark Souls 2 let you do it, but that's the only one. So for now, he goes in B, and we move on to a boss that I know we have thoughts on, which is Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy.
Join the Serpent King as remedy. Together we will devour the very god.
Yes, together. Rykard is S. I love the uniqueness of his battle. I've never played a game with a battle like him before. You walk in, there's this spear right there, and the first time I picked it up and I didn't use it, but then the second time when I actually started to use the spear, and I understand there's probably some haters out there that are like, oh, well, if you truly want to fight him. But like that's kind of what makes him fun and unique is like you use this special item, you fight him, and he's still challenging. It's not like he's a total pushover. I mean, he kind of is with that spear, but you still have to like think about it. And I thought from start to finish, the visuals, I made fun of his voice at the beginning, but like I liked him from start to finish. He's S tier for me.
Yeah, totally S tier. It's no doubt in my mind S tier. So this is a fight that From Software has been doing for a while. There's one in Demon Souls like this, and there's one in Dark Souls 3 like this, where you have a special weapon that you pick up to use against only that boss. But the one in Demon Souls is really fun. The one in Dark Souls 3 is terrible. And the one in Elden Ring is incredible. Like the spectacle, the voice actor gave like 1000% effort. And yeah, I had a great time fighting him. He's really easy when you use that weapon because I think the weapon art staggers him, and you can just repeat that until he dies. But until I figured that out, I was having a bit of trouble with him. And if you go back to, did you go back to his boss room after you killed him?
I didn't, but I watched a video of someone who did, so I know what happened.
It is the most insane From Software shit. For people who are listening, I said full spoilers. If you didn't go back, if you go back in, the woman who's like the head of Volcano Manor, she will be in the boss arena eating his remains.
But just like a human eating a giant snake, like
Yeah, it's
small pieces.
with her hands. You walk in and you just hear the sound of chewing, and you're like, "That's weird." And then you see something, and you're like, "Okay." You see the woman; she has a gold dress on. It's easy to spot her. And then you walk up, and she tells you about we're going to become one and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, I'll leave you to that. Don't want to interrupt whatever you two have going on here. Very, very From Software to have this be something that's A, in the game at all, but B, something that most people will probably miss, because after you beat him, why would you go back to his boss arena,
Mm-hmm.
But Rykard, S tier. Next up, we're going underground. So we're going to do most of the underground bosses here. First up is the Dragonkin Soldier. This first one you do underground. There's another one that's in the Lake of Rot, but this one, the first one.
From Noxtella. Yeah, he the first time I fought him, I was severely underleveled, and I stumbled across him. His spectacle is pretty great. I think he's like one of the biggest bosses in the entire game. I do.
Yeah, he's real big.
He's huge, and I really liked fighting him at first. He probably goes in B. I think he's a ton of fun, good for the spectacle, and you don't fight him so many times that you get like bored of him.
Yeah, I think you fight maybe 3 of them in the game, and there's one in the Lake of Rot that I ignored because I don't want to fight in the Lake of Rot.
Mm-hmm.
But I have him in B tier. I enjoyed the fight. I enjoy the way he looks. His moveset's pretty crazy. I like the first one you fight. You're in this arena with this giant skeleton lord on like a giant throne, and it's a really cool sight to see. So I'm putting him in B tier too. I don't have a whole lot else to say. Just a good From Software boss. And I think you brought this up earlier, but I really believe that a B tier From Software boss would be the best boss fight in a lot of other action games. So saying that it's a B tier is pretty damn good in the scope of all action games, I think.
For sure. Now, I constantly compare this game with something like Breath of the Wild, and I'm like, the boss battles in this are just heads and tails. So even like the C tiers in this are better than those boss fights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, next one on the list is one that a lot of people feel strongly about. We'll see if we feel like it's better than things in other games. It's the Valiant Gargoyles. From Software just fucking loves throwing multiple gargoyles at you, and Elden Ring is no exception.
Yeah, I remember these guys the first time you come across them, there is 2 all of a sudden, and you don't have Solaire to help you.
Yeah.
So you know what? I thought they were fine this time around, just like they were the first time. It was about what I expected when I saw that second HP bar show up in my very first fight. It was like, of course. But ultimately, it didn't spoil my fun. B, start to finish.
I have this one in C. I beat this my first try, and then when I was summoning, like helping other people, because a couple of friends needed help with it, I kind of saw how difficult they can be. I just kind of got lucky my first time. So yeah, C, I think. And then you fight more of these gargoyles later. They're never super fun to fight. They're just a little bit too big, and yeah, not a huge fan. And I'm generally not a fan of multiple boss fights anyway. Things where it's 2-on-1 or 3-on-1. 2v2 if you're using your spirit summons, like the game is encouraging you to do, but still. C tier, Valiant
Agreed.
Gargoyles.
The double up is a little lame. Did you ever do the cheese where like you could get them to fall off the waterfall? I never did.
No, I never did, and I never tried, because, again, I beat them my first try, and then after that I was summoned in to help people, so I never tried that.
Gotcha. Just curious.
Yeah. Next up is the Mimic tier, which is a cool fight, like in concept, like, the evolution of Dark Link. But how do you feel about it as a fight in totality?
The Mimic tier probably shows how how bad my character was designed at that point. I had to respec to do the mid game so that I could be a little bit more heavy armor so I could survive Kaled basically. But the Mimic tier was really easy for me, like really easy. And then I think that's the moment that I realized, like, oh, if I'm gonna like truly go for a full build on this, I need to go back and rebuild my character. Because he wasn't very difficult, but I also don't think that I was building a very strong character at that point.
Well, number one, it's great that in Elden Ring it's so easy to go respec, and you can respec 15 times without doing any extra like searching for those items. Mimic tier is in C for me. What I think this fight shows is that NPC fights in From Software games are very, very cheesable. Like the AI is not great, and it's very easy to just, in Elden Ring, just do jump attacks because the AI has no idea what to do about a jump attack. So, like, I had a good build, and I still thrashed the Mimic tier. It's just NPCs in these games are pretty easy. There's a couple in Elden Ring that are really hard, but it's more about, like, the special stuff they have than the fact that they are an NPC invader or something. So, this is C for me, but it gave me my best buddy, my helper throughout the rest of the game, the Mimic tier Spirit Ashes.
Yeah, dude, he's the best.
Next up, we have Estelle, Natural Born of the Void.
I loved him. I thought he was so weird. I actually found him first in the tunnel that you meet him in, not like because you meet him twice, I believe.
Yeah.
And I saw him first in the space that you're like not supposed to find him. And I was just like, what is this weird, like totally bizarre space scorpion doing? I liked him. That doesn't mean like he's an absolutely like amazing boss fight start to finish. I think he's A just for the fact that he's so unique within this game. But he doesn't do anything that's like absolutely spectacular.
Yeah. I'm going to put him in A also. I really like, of course, I like the way it looks and the arena and stuff like that. It would be an S tier, but he's got one attack that is an automatic one-hit kill, and he kind of teleports and then reappears and does a grab attack really quickly, and it just kills you in one hit. Killed me in one hit. So when that happened, I was just like, this is, From Software, why? But once I learned how to dodge that attack, I really enjoy this fight a lot. So A tier, both for being a pretty fun fight, but like incredible spectacle, I think. He gives you a weapon from his boss soul that's like it's like a flail, but it's like a little mini solar system, and it's like the coolest looking weapon in the game, but it's not very good. I was using Dex and Intelligence, so it was like perfect for my build, and I used it against things that need strike damage, like the Crystallians or whatever they're called. But
I hate
other than
those
that,
things.
other than that, that weapon looks really cool, but is not great. Anyway,
The boss looks great, but yeah.
Next up, to the capital, the boss of the capital city, Morgott, the Omen King.
So I mean, sort of the does he even change actually? That's what I want to start out with because you bump into him again in the field just outside of it, and he's literally just the same character.
It's him as Margit out in the field because Morgott, Margit, Moog, they're all the same person as far as I know. Just
Okay,
taking on disguises and aliases and stuff like that. So
gotcha.
Morgott is very similar to Margit, but has a bunch of new attacks, especially in the later phase.
So I think we're going to start to encounter, by this point in the game, I had done all of mid game. I mean, I had like completed Ronnie's quest line as much as I could amongst like all the other places under the ground. And by the time I started to get back onto the main quest, I was literally using some of the most powerful spells in the game. So you'd have battles like this where I'd just be like, Azure beam, was that what it is?
Comet Azure, yeah.
Yeah, I would just do that and then like, oh, that's not hitting right now. Okay, let me move and go try this again. So I thought he was great, but I think I beat him really fast.
So I'm putting him in B because from the videos I've seen of other people fighting him, he looks really cool. However, I beat the first phase. I died one time, and then I beat the first phase, and then the second phase started, and he starts doing this speech. And while he's doing his speech, I used Comet Azure and killed him, and he was dead before he was finished with his speech. So I don't have a lot of like specific things to say about, especially phase 2. Phase 1 was pretty fun. From other people's videos of phase 2, that looks pretty cool. But I don't have a whole lot to say. So B.
Yeah, B for me too.
All right. Next up is Commander Nile. We're going into the snow levels. Commander Nile is the boss of Castle Sol, which is an optional but pretty important step along getting to the Halig tree, I believe. Anyway.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Commander
he's
Nile.
Like Commander O'Neill in Caelid in the central area. I liked the visuals and like the idea that he's got like a peg leg that's a sword. He's a boss that only shows up, 2 times. So again, he gets the uniqueness factor. Honestly, I thought O'Neill was probably A tier for me. Nile is probably a B only because the stuff that he spawns with, I could not stand those fully armored knights that were dual wielding like broadswords. I couldn't stand them.
Yeah, the things that he spawns with are really hard by themselves. And now there's 2 of them and a boss. So Nile is going in D tier for me. And if it was just Nile, I would probably put him in A, probably B or A, I think. But it's not. He spawns with 2 ads, and they're incredibly hard for me. And then once you kill the ads and you get to fight Nile one-on-one, I found that really fun. I actually really liked learning his moveset. But 2 ads, like I get it. The story, he's a commander. These are his soldiers he's summoning in and stuff like that. But from a play perspective, which comes first, I think it's pretty shitty. However, I do have one very fun thing where I was, because I had such a hard time with this, I put my summon sign down and was helping other people fight him. And this one time, someone summoned me and another person, and we all were summoned in. We all looked like we had fairly different builds. But as soon as we walked in the door, all 3 of us drank that wondrous physic that gives you unlimited magic, and all 3 of us used Comet Azure, and he died in 5 seconds. No joke, just melted. And I saved the video of it, and it was just very funny, and I did not feel bad because he's a dick. So, Commander Nile.
Well done.
Next up. Ooh, this is a big one. Literally and figuratively. The fire
Mhm.
giant.
Ah, yes. I really like the fire giant. He's a fire giant, and there's like it's sort of exactly what you'd expect. Like he's huge. You're getting up, you're attacking his legs. He's doing these big attacks. I think he's in. I think he's an A tier for me. His second phase, when he transforms, it looks so good. Like never at any point would I expect a giant eye and mouth to come out of someone's abdomen.
Yeah.
But I thought that was great from start to finish.
That's one of the coolest mid-boss fight cutscenes that FromSoft has ever done. When that eye appeared, I was like, what the fuck is happening right now? I'm about to get destroyed. I mean, the third eye came out of his stomach. That's got to be bad for me. I have him in A tier too. I think the fight is fine. I like that you can summon Alexander for the fight. I like Alexander. And I like that you can ride your horse. Whenever you have a big arena and a big boss, I love riding Torrent around. A lot of people use Torrent for... there's a thing where when you dismount Torrent, you get iframes during that animation. So the fire giant has one attack that's like kind of hard to dodge because it covers such a huge area. But if you dismount Torrent, you'll iframe through it, which is kind of a nice strategy that people have found. I think I beat him my second try, which is, again, probably why I have such a high opinion of him. I know some people had a really hard time. Like Aaron was on the show last week, and he had a horrible time with the fire giant. And I know his experience is not unique, but I didn't. I really like the fight. A tier.
I think I beat him on my first try, but the spectacle again, I'll never forget just him tearing off his own leg. It's just brutal. It's great, start to finish.
From Software has this in like several of their games where, you know, Godric cuts off his arm, the fire giant rips his leg off, Amygdala in Bloodborne rips off one of its arms and uses it as a weapon against you. Anytime that shit starts happening in one of these games, you know things just got real. Next up, we have the Regal Ancestor Spirit. And you fight a couple of these.
Yeah, the big ancient deer. I was fine on these. The first time I fought it, I really liked it. The second time I fought it, I liked the music and the arena more than I actually liked the fight, because it just starts disappearing and reappearing far away from you a little bit too much. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I think this is probably low B, maybe even in the C tier. But it's unique. I mean, you never fight anything else quite like it.
Yeah. Oh man, this one's tough. I really like the visual. I like the idea of fighting this giant, stag. The fight is fine. It's not anything special. It's not as bad as the final boss for like disappearing and reappearing really far away from you.
Oh,
But
I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah. I'll put this one in B. I don't think there's anything this boss does wrong or like anything that I think is bad or not fun, but there isn't anything that I think is really special other than the way it looks and its design. So B tier, it's an average boss. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Continuing, we're still going through underground stuff. We're in the I forget what this area is called, but we're gonna fight Fia's champions, and this is connected to her quest line. So did you even get this far in her quest line?
I did. I actually, I did almost the entire game. Like I think I've completed most quest lines and side quests and everything. I
Okay.
thought that Fia's quest, uh, I thought it was actually one of the better quest lines in the entire game. Um, the end of it here, when you start to fight like her champions and stuff, wasn't super exciting. I felt like they all died pretty quickly. That might have been a testament to how far along in the game I was at that time. But I don't remember having an issue with them at all. So I'll say B because I'm pretty sure I did it first try.
Yeah, I beat it first try too. I have it in D. I just don't, some of these games have fights like this, whether it's a full boss fight or, just kind of like a set piece where you fight a bunch of NPCs. And I just think it's boring. And if you're really into the story of Fia's quest, then this might hit a little bit harder, but I don't really care. I don't really feel bad for killing like Rogier or something during this. So this was boring. They all go down really quickly. Like I said, From Software NPCs are, if you're at the right level and you're doing enough damage, they're all pretty damn easy. These are no exception. Put this one in D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Next up, though, something a little bit more interesting. It's another dragon fight. Fia asks you to like go into this memory, and inside of the memory, you fight Lich Dragon Fortisax. So I fought this thing. I killed it very quickly because I was probably pretty over leveled for what it is at the time. I remember I beat Fia's champions, and then I got worried that like fighting this and finishing her quest would affect the ending I got, and I wasn't ready to commit to an ending. So I just like left it and did a bunch of other shit and then came back. So I killed this thing pretty quickly. So I don't have a lot of, detailed things to share. It looks cool. It was not bullshit when I fought it. So I'm just going to put it in B. Same thing I did for Morgott and Elimer.
Mm-hmm.
So next up, we have Moog, Lord of Blood. Where do you got Moog?
So Moog, I mean, like many bosses on this list, Moog looks beautiful. The start to finish aesthetics of that battle are S tier. They are. You're in this like red, glowing, golden, like Greek Acropolis sort of thing. And he shows up out of this gross cocoon pool of blood. All that being said, I crushed Moog so quickly because by this point, the build was all starting to come together. I was overpowered. I was getting the rhythm of the game. I can not tell you a single thing that this guy does other than move around with a trident. But it looks great. It looks amazing start to finish. Moog, unfortunately, is going to be the first of many bosses that gets probably an undeserving B tier just because I beat him so fast. That being said, his looks are S tier.
So I think I hit the right thing with this one. Like, I beat him in 2 or 3 tries. So like that's right in my sweet spot where like I learn the attacks a little bit across a couple of failed tries. I summon in my Spirit Ash, my Mimic Tier, and then I am able to beat him that way. And you're right, like the spectacle of it, there's so many effects flying through the air. There's blood everywhere flying around. This is one of those fights where like you're constantly getting hit with stuff and it's constantly like getting bleed on you and stuff like that, but it feels a lot more dangerous than it actually is. And so you maybe freak out when if you just chill, it's actually, I don't think this is that hard. And especially he has that one attack that procs bleed on you 3 times in a row, like at the beginning of his second phase. And that's like super intimidating when you first come across it. But when you kind of realize like, oh, just kind of heal 3 times, you'll be fine. And then get back to the fight. I really, really like this. It is in S tier, partly for spectacle, partly for this move set that's really fun to learn, I think. And then just doing some stuff that's pretty unique as far as bosses go. So that's S tier for Moog for me.
Nice.
Next up, we have this is a weird one. We're just going to throw it in here. The full-grown Falling Star Beast.
Oh, yeah. These guys, this is like by now he will be like the 3rd or 4th that you fight throughout the game. They were always fine. They were inoffensive to me, but they weren't particularly amazing boss fights. They seemed relatively simple, just charging bull, I'll just kind of get out of your way. The gravity attacks were kind of fun to learn the first few times. Ultimately, I think it's a B tier. Like it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have really strong thoughts about this. That gravity attack is really cool the first time it hits you with it, but you end up not getting hit with it a bunch once you learn how to avoid it. And you just fight this thing too many fucking times. Like you fight like 6 of these things throughout the game. And there were a couple times when I was like at the top of what's it called? Volcano Manor, the top of Mount
Yes.
Gelmir.
Mhm.
You go through all these things, you're climbing these ladders, you're killing these enemies, you're fighting your way up to the top, and then when you get to the top, it's Falling Star Beast number 5 that you fight. And that was kind of a letdown. So I'm going to put this in C. If you fought this thing one time, I think it's fine. Still not great, but they wear out their welcome, I think.
Agreed.
All right. Now we're getting into kind of the end of the main quest and then some of the infamous optional bosses here. So the first one is the Godskin Apostle, which again is the skinny one of the duo, of the Godskin duo. And you can fight one of these on Altus Plateau near Mount Gelmir in the Windmill Village. There's also one at the bottom of this tower in Caelid. And that's the first one I fought, which is way harder than the one in the Windmill Village. So where are you putting the Godskin Apostle?
That's actually the first one I fought was also in the basement of the tower in Caelid, and that's good to know that he's way harder than the Windmill because he might be the hardest. He might be the boss I fought the most times in all of Elden Ring. So I don't like him. Like I'm very frustrated with his boss fight. Even after learning it and finally doing better and then, moving forward to the duo and everything, he's a C, maybe even D for me. He can do too many things. He gets all stretchy. He's throwing fire everywhere. He was very frustrating.
I actually like this fight. It's in B. I don't love it, but I did enjoy learning the moves. I spent probably too much time trying to fight the one in Caelid before I was like properly leveled up for it. But I do like this fight. I like how he's stretching around. It's really unsettling. So B tier for me. So yeah, by themselves, I guess I have the Godskin Apostle in B, the Godskin Noble in C by themselves. But now we have the Godskin Duo. Because we're going through Crumbling Farum Azula in the quest. So, Godskin Duo, Jim, where do you have these?
I mean, I think we've both sort of said that we dislike the idea when the developer just thinks, just throw 2 of them at them, they'll be fine. By Crumbling Farum Azula, I mean, I'd done the Halig tree and everything by this point, so I was full on, oh, okay, here's a boss. I'm just gonna Comet Azure this thing down. I don't remember having a big issue with the Godskin duo, which is funny because I think the Reddit, subreddit was like, oh, these guys are awful after so many patches. They're probably just because it's the duo, and I think that 2 is not great. They're C, but I really don't remember them very much.
Yeah. So I'm putting them in C also, and they would go in D, but From Software recently patched them, so they're easier now. Because the thing that sucks about them is you don't just fight two of them. They constantly revive each other until
Yes,
until the health bar is down.
it's
And
awful.
I think that's shitty. You should just be able to kill both of them. It's pretty tough. Like, just let me kill both of them, and then have it be done. But From Software didn't want to do it like that for whatever reason. The only reason this isn't in D tier is you get an NPC summon there that's really good. And my philosophy is if the game gives you a very obvious NPC summon, especially in a 2-on-1 fight, why not take it? I mean, if you don't take it, you're artificially making it harder for yourself. They made it very obvious that, like, they want you to take the dude from Volcano Manor into this fight with you. So I did, and I had my actually, I don't think you can use your Spirit Ashes if you summon. But anyway, I took this dude in with me, and I beat them on maybe my second try, and it was fine. I don't like the idea of the fight, though, and that's why it's down in C. Just, like, really hard for me to get excited about a 2-on-1 fight if it's not... Well, I don't even like Ornstein and Smo that much, so, like, I won't even use them as an example. But anyway, yeah, that's where I'm at. C for the Godskin duo.
All right.
Next up is Malekith the Black Blade.
He looks great. His boss fight looks awesome, and bonus points for the fact that you meet him earlier. For like, there's at least backstory between you guys with you giving him the death root and him kind of like unlocking certain ashes of war for you.
Yep.
But as far as the fight in and of itself is as amazing as it looks, again, by this point I was over leveled and the build was all together. I think I beat him on my second try. I think I had more trouble with the doorman for him than I did for him. The like tree sentinel that's running around Crumbling Farm Azula. I think I beat him on my second try. I remember him being like very jumpy through the air, which was like a lot of fun, kept me on my toes. But other than that, not having a ton of problems with him. I'd put him in A.
Ooh, okay. I have him in C. I think that Malekith is capital T, capital M, too much. Too aggressive. He has that status effect that whenever he hits you with his fucking burning sword, it'll like burn off part of your HP. Yeah, the first fight, the first phase of the fight when he's just, the Beastmaster or whatever he's called, I don't really like that part either. And then Malekith comes in, he's jumping around, whenever he jumps, he throws these like discs of energy at you. He has these relentless sword combos. It's just too much. And this is one of the more troubling boss fights for me, like in the whole game. So I think this one took me, 10 to 15 tries to beat. I did not have fun learning this. And then the time I beat it, it was just because like, oh, my spirit summon survived phase 1 and then was able to draw attention a little bit in phase 2 and let me get in some hits. And then, oh shit, my spirit summon died. And then I was just, somehow able to do it, but I don't really know how, Like I didn't feel like I ever learned this fight. So,
Yeah.
not a big fan.
Interesting. I had I think a similar situation with potentially the next boss. I don't know. I don't want to give it away. I'll let you introduce.
Okay. Well, the next boss is in Crumbling Farum Azula 2. It's another optional boss. In fact, I totally missed this until I was ready to beat the game. And I remembered seeing people mention this name around. And I was like, wait, I never fought that. Where is that? And it's because it's hidden behind one of the only boss runs in the entire game and a thing where you have to go lie down and wait for like
Literally.
the storm to pick you up. Yeah, so I found the boss arena, or like I found the place where you have to lie down, but I just missed the prompt to lie down. So I was like, oh, okay, there's nothing down here. And then I left and I never went back. Turns out that's where you fight Dragon Lord Placidosax.
Yeah. So this guy, this is who I thought we were going to talk about next. Or I
Yep.
was hoping we were going to. So this guy I missed. And I remember running through Crumbling Farm Azula and seeing that spot down there by the base of the tornado and being like, I bet you I can get down there. And never finding that cliff you have to jump off.
Mm-hmm.
And then when, later on, I was asked to do this, it was like, well, there's this boss I never fought. So I went back, turned on Elden Ring after, weeks of being off of it, went in, tried this guy 3 or 4 times, never beat him, decided I'm never going to try again. And so that's the end of that. But
Okay.
similar thing where, for me, he was a lot to deal with. I disliked the fact that he kind of redons, he will disappear and then all of a sudden A-bomb you from out of the air. And he was like one hit killing me at level 100 and, 50 or whatever level I was at. Like he was one-shotting me. What you just described with Malekith, I was having the same issues here, where it'd be like my spirit ashes, okay, I can maybe get the mimic tier to survive for a little bit longer, which is then going to dictate how far I can go in this battle. Because if I can get off and, shoot this guy and get him in a good spot, it just got to I think I tried it 4 or 5 different times. I mean, I'm sure if I had continued on with it, I would have beat him, but I wasn't having a great time. Maybe I just wasn't in the mood, but he was a C for me. Just very frustrating.
Yeah, I totally get that. I have him in A. I really like this fight. I found it very learnable. Even the parts where he's disappearing and redawning in, as you said, I found those to be pretty much automatic dodges. And the only reason this thing is not in S tier is because it has like this laser beam attack in its second phase that will one hit kill you. And I'm not a fan of that. I just don't understand why that continues to be something that From Software puts in their boss fights. And this is not like a Dave didn't level vigor thing. Like I had vigor at 50 for most of the game. So this was, yeah. But the rest of the fight I found was really fun. Again, this game has great dragon fights, and I think this one is the most complex of all the dragons. Definitely has the most health. And yeah, I just really liked it.
Mm-hmm. He looks good. The 2 heads, I mean, I'm always a sucker for a 2-headed dragon.
Yeah, I mean, who isn't? If you don't like a 2-headed dragon, you can get out.
That's right.
Next up. So we're going into kind of the end game here. Let's see, what do we want to do? Let's go to the Halig tree, and then let's do the end of the main game bosses. So
All right.
kind of the one I think I have the least to talk about here in the end game is Loretta, Knight of the Halig tree.
Yeah, she I thought was great actually the first time you fought her
In
up in
Caria Manor, yeah.
Yes, exactly. I remember actually having like trouble with her there, but like still liking the fight enough that I wanted to continue with it. I still liked her in the Halig tree. I didn't necessarily dislike her at all. Again, I by this point, the intelligence build and the spells that I was unlocking meant that unless I really needed to, I didn't have to get in bosses' faces. And you know, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave. I think, at least for me, with limited FromSoft experience, these games tend to, I think, most optimally be played when you are kind of up in the boss's face, where you're being just as aggressive as they are, getting your rolls, getting your iframes. That's to me where they seem to be the most exciting.
It's definitely the optimal strategy for a lot of bosses, for sure. I don't know if it's like for all of them, but certainly for anything bigger than you are, you want to be up in their crotch or like in their butt crack. It's a tried and true strategy in most FromSoft games. Yeah.
Stay on it, stagger them, get your God of War style like finishers. But
Yep.
she's got a horse, which is fine, but so that allows her to cover quite a lot of distance. I always liked her spells. The bow spell I thought was one of the most useful ones in the game. She probably goes in B for me.
Yeah, I'll put her in B as well. By this point in the Halig tree, you have fought countless tree sentinels and other enemies on horseback, knights cavalry, and stuff like that. So when you get here, it's just like throw in a couple of spells. They're not so hard to dodge. This fight was pretty easy. I basically just wiped the floor with her. So I don't have a whole lot to say other than it's just kind of like a warm up for what's coming. But yeah, I'll put Loretta in B. The fight in Caria Manor was cool. It's a really cool arena there, surrounded by all the chairs and stuff like that.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Next up, we have the most infamous, maybe the most infamous From Software boss that they've ever created, and it is Millennia, Blade of Miquella.
Heed my words. I am Millennia, Blade of Miquella. And I have never known defeat.
This is I don't like her. This is the legend that I'm not a fan of. There's a meme that I'm going to quote from the subreddit, which, sticks with me forever about this. And I'm probably even going to get the quote wrong, but it was basically like, whatever bullshit Millennia is pulling off is just super unfair. I think she's a C. I don't like how much she can do and how big her hitboxes are. And I think Scarlet Rot sucks. So yeah, for all those reasons, she's C tier for me.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because I really like this, but can I put it in S tier while still acknowledging things that I think are kind of bullshit? I'm not sure. So I'm going to put her in A. I actually really do like learning this fight. I think it's very learnable. So her attacks that heal you, those suck. Straight up, I don't like that as an idea. Or the attacks that heal her, sorry. I don't like that even if you block the attack, it still heals. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And the kind of jumping in the air Hornet from Hollow Knight attack, there are ways to dodge it and there are ways to get away from it, but you need to have such good reaction time to avoid it that the time that I beat her, she just didn't use that attack, and that's probably why I beat her. However, I think that there's some nuance to her because there are things that make it easier. She's super susceptible to status effects. Frostbite and Bleed were what I used, but I've seen people use Scarlet Rot against her. She can be staggered very easily. Like you can stun lock her for a full combo, which is not something that most bosses let you do. So like there are things that I think suck, but there are obvious concessions that From Software made to make it a little bit more fair. When she starts phase 2, she starts with like 70% of a health bar, which is kind of weird, but kind of cool. I don't know. It's a really interesting fight to think about the mechanics behind all of it. So did you beat her?
I did.
What was your strategy?
I actually, oh goodness, my strategy was bust out the mimic tier and pray. Get a good wondrous physic. Seriously, I never summoned in like real people to come help me. So like oh my gosh, let me solo her, like I never got to meet that legend. But for me it was the mimic tier, and then just pray to God it could distract her and survive long enough that I could do what I felt I needed to. With Dark Souls 1 and then this game, obviously there's a lot of stuff in it that, like giants were never real and neither were wolf men or whatever. But the one thing that I always liked is that when it came to the weapon attacks, a person holding a weapon, it felt, to me at least, it looks like it could feel real and that the sweep was there. And then she just had this attack that would come out of nowhere and it would like hit in a 360 around her. Actually, it was literally a whole sphere, and she'd do that like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, the
It
hornet
was just
attack.
frustrating.
Yep.
Exactly. You described it very well with that. That was always just very frustrating to me. And that's extending into the realms of like, okay, we're just Dragon Ball Z at this point.
My strategy was I tended to go for most bosses. I went Moonveil right hand and a shield in the left hand. I used a lot of guard counters throughout the game. Use some magic when I have a chance. Use the Moonveil's weapon art when I have a chance. But that didn't work against Millennia, so I had to kind of redo my strategy. And what I ended up finding out was because you can stagger her and you can stun lock her, you can interrupt her attacks if you hit her in the right timing. Is I made an ice Uchigatana, and I dual wielded katanas. And then when I summoned in my mimic tier, it was also dual wielding katanas. And we could get ourselves in the right position where Millennia is up against a wall and we would just combo. And that just, the time that it worked the way I planned, it just melted her first phase health bar down. And then the second phase, once you learn how to dodge that dive bomb, it's really not that bad. And I think I have a video of this. She did the dive bomb. I hit her with the Comet Azure when she was recovering from that dive bomb. And then she started to aggro again, but by that point she had like 15% health and just a couple of ranged like rock slings was enough. And that was really cool. It was a strategy that I just through trial and error found that worked best. Getting frostbite and bleed at the same time really helped out. And then the second phase strategy to get through it, because it is a lot. And people will see the let me solar her guy, but that's not a typical experience for most people. So
yeah, he's a freak.
Yeah. But I do think that this fight is learnable, and I did like how it made me experiment with my own build in a way that none of the other bosses made me do. And then once I did experiment and find the thing that I thought was going to work the best, it just took, 4 or 5 tries, and then I had it down. So, yeah, putting this one in A tier, there are some issues with it for sure, but I ended up just pretty positive overall on it. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, we have 3 more bosses left, and this is the end game boss rush right here. So starting off with Sir Gideon Ofnir the All-Knowing.
Yeah, so Sir Gideon, liked him as a character, barely remember him as a boss. I think I did die to him, but only because I think I jumped off the bridge on accident. Like it was just like, oh, I'll just go over here, and then proceeded to die. But I don't remember his boss fight very much. Again, he's another one of these NPCs. I actually do agree with what you said, where a lot of times the NPCs, they are kind of easy to cheese a bit. I don't remember having a problem with this guy. He gets a B because I liked his character and he's not very memorable as a boss fight.
Yeah, I'm putting him in C. First of all, extremely easy. Like maybe just a warm up for the next boss, but super easy. I don't even know if he hit me. Of course, I was using my Spirit Ash, but he was dead very quickly. And I think that's by design. I don't think this is a really hard fight that people are having trouble with. It's just not very memorable, other than the fact that he's kind of been your mentor throughout the whole game, giving you advice on where to go and background on some of the bosses. And then when you do get to the end, he's waiting for you in that room. I kind of enjoyed that, but the fight itself, pretty forgettable. So C tier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The next one, though, unforgettable in a lot of ways. So we're combining Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, and Hoarah together.
Yeah. I loved Godfrey and thought Hoarah was so weird. Like just so bizarre.
It is bizarre.
Godfrey, it looks great. Like you've got this sort of like crazy Conan the Barbarian. He's got a giant axe and this like lion that halfway through the battle he rips its face off and everything. Great boss battle, great visuals. Some people on like Reddit and stuff have shown how like it seems to be as though Godfrey's grace is actually pointing to you, showing that like if this was his story, you are his destiny, sort of thing. So you've got these wonderful things that are set up, and then halfway through the battle he just turns into like a bloody sumo wrestler.
Yeah.
It takes a weird left turn and like I don't even remember the second part of the boss battle because I think he tried to come grapple me a couple times, and after I rolled out of the way, it like I was able to beat him in the amount of time that it took him to recover. So I thought Godfrey was A, and Hoarah I honestly can't even rank. So like he gets A tier by default.
Okay, that's fair enough. I'm putting this combo in B because I don't like Godfrey that much. I don't think Godfrey's very interesting.
Nice.
Hoarah is hilarious. When he goes through that transition, and that cutscene's really cool, as you said, and then he runs over and grapples you and suplexes you into the ground. I love that. Like I laughed out loud when I saw that. I think Hoarah is great, but I think Godfrey is forgettable. I don't remember most of Godfrey's moves. I know he stomps the ground a bunch, and this is my fault, I know, but I never, ever through 95 hours internalized to jump during boss fights. Never. And that's the move where you have to jump when he stomps the ground. But I just, I can't undo 500 hours of muscle memory playing the other From Software games to learn how to jump during boss fights. It's just not going to happen. So,
sure.
Yeah. B tier overall. I don't have a whole lot to say except that Hoarah is hilarious. And again, From Software just being weird. I love it. All right. Last one, Jim. The combo of Radagon of the Golden Order and the Elden Beast. And we can kind of tackle these separately if you want to, but they go in the tier list together. So
Okay, so they definitely deserve to be talked about separately. Radigan, but we can rank them together. I'm fine with that. Radigan is, I mean, it's the boss fight you've been going up for the whole time. You walk in, you get a good cutscene, the music starts, it's intense. Radigan has a lot of moves where they are just on you the whole time. There's like this jumping hammer throw that I remember just being very intimidated by. They're doing the slow walk. All of your damage is, you're not staggering this person.
Mm-hmm.
They are intimidating. It's a really solid final boss fight. And then the Elden Beast is really weird and kind of a microcosm of a lot of the things that I found frustrating with some of the most frustrating bosses that we've talked about. The Elden Beast, you fight him on this. So visually, it looks great. You have this giant, brontosaurus with all these sort of, things coming out of its back, and it's got the inside of it looks like, a constellation and the cosmos. So it looks great, but it is, it's moving around on a battlefield that's way too big. It's getting really far away from you and then tossing these, comet azures back at you, but then you have to kind of spend 30 to 40 seconds like just running over to get to it, and maybe it will move by then. Just kind of, I don't know. I felt like Radigan was a really good final boss, and I thought that the Elden Beast as a final boss was interesting to look at. Radigan is A tier easy, maybe S tier. Elden Beast is probably a C. So combined together, I'd say that's high B, low A.
Okay, interesting. I am salty. I'll get that. I'll say that right out front. I'm very salty about this fight. I think Radagon is too much. Like, it's the final boss. Sure, make Radagon be as hard as he is. But Radagon is as hard or harder than the Soul of Cinder in Dark Souls 3, which is another boss fight that I hate because he never stops. There's no pause. Mm-hmm. I never found consistent windows to attack. So I had such a hard time. Like, Radagon was harder than Millennia, because at least with Millennia, I could learn and be like, okay, that attack, I see that tell, I know that attack. Okay, she jumps up in the air, start running. That attack is coming. And with Radagon, it just seemed like endless combos. When the combo's over, he jumps back and throws a ranged attack. I just could not get my head around it. So Radagon by himself, I would put at C. Elden Beast, though. Elden Beast is like the coolest fucking thing to look at. Like one of the coolest bosses I've ever seen in a FromSoft game. Mm-hmm. I hate this fight, though. Like, I think the fight is legit terrible. So this combo is going in D. I hate this. And if you split them up, that would have been more fair, I think. But doing them back to back with as hard as Radagon is, and then as much of a fucking war of attrition as the Elden Beast is, I hate it. And I was thinking, this is not my unique thought. Lots of people have said this too, but if they just let you ride Torrent during the Elden Beast fight, it would be so much better, because then you can avoid all of this homing magic that he shoots out. And when he teleports to the other side of the arena, you can run over there and get back up close. I played this as a ranged magic fight. I can only imagine what it would be like for someone who's using a colossal weapon or something like that. It would be unbearable. So this is the only fight in the game that I had to summon another human to help me beat. And the person I summoned in was, they were power stancing two colossal weapons, like two insane weapons. And they basically, like, we beat Radagon together, and then they beat the Elden Beast by themselves. while I
Oh
kind of
gosh.
avoided damage and just shot magic while I could. I hate this. I think this is, let me think through final bosses. The final boss of Dark Souls 2 is a little bit anticlimactic from a play perspective, but I don't hate it. It's easy. The final boss of Dark Souls 3, I really don't like, but I like it more than this because it's just one boss fight. So yeah, I hate this. It's D tier. It's a shame to end this on a sour note with like one of my least favorite things in the game, but that's how the game ends. So yeah, D for Radagon and the Elden Beast, mostly because I hate the Elden Beast fight, actually fighting it, even though it looks so cool. It's so cool, Jim. And the music in the final boss, they're doing the reprise of the title theme. It's really good music, but I just got so frustrated with the fight.
It's hard to disagree with you, but the music, I mean, just to lay on that a little bit, the music in this whole game like slaps start to
It's
finish.
excellent.
It's
Yeah.
a great soundtrack.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, when people listen to this episode, they'll hear music throughout the episode from the different bosses, and all the other episodes in Elden Ring month have been full of music from the game. I agree. The music pretty much consistently through the game is really good. And yeah, that last boss fight, that was one where it was like really got me pumped up, bringing back that title theme music. You know, this is a long ass game, and you've heard that title screen every time you boot the game up for however long it takes you to get to that point. And then they bring it back at this, you know, this climax, this ending. Yeah, it's real good. This is a thing that From Software has been doing for a while now, where they have these like multi-phase boss fights, like where sometimes like 2, even 3 full boss fights back to back to back. And if you die in phase 3, you have to do phase 1 and 2 all over again. It's a huge problem in Dark Souls 3 with some of the harder bosses. And Sekiro's final boss is like this too. It gets to be a real drag. And then Elden Ring like really didn't do that for most of the game until the final boss, and it just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, you know. But you know, it is what it is. I'm looking at my tier list. Things are good for the most part. That's kind of how I want to wrap this episode up, is just by going over what do we have in the D tier, you know, the bottoms, and then what do we have in the A and S tier. So for me, I have in the D tier, I have the Red Wolf of Radagon, and then we have the like the multi fights, right? The Crucible Knight and Misbegotten Warrior, Commander Nile, Thea's Champions, and then Radagon and Elden Beast. That's the D tier for me. A tier, I have Margit, the Fell Omen, Flying Dragon Agheel, Renala, Astel, Natural Born of the Void, Fire Giant, Placidusax, and Millennia. And then the best of the best, the S tier, I have 4 bosses here: Godric, Radon, Rykard, and Moog. And of those, it's hard to pick a favorite. I'm going to remember Radon, I think, the most from this game, and Rykard, of course, for different reasons. But yeah, that's my S tier.
Altogether, I mean, this game has a lot of boss battles, and I think the quality of them stays consistently very high. Even though we are placing things in C and in D, you said so earlier, and I couldn't agree more, that a D-list boss battle in this game might be one of the best boss battles in another game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I actually had anything in D tier. I'm gonna toss a little bit of shade at things that we didn't talk about and say like stuff like the Deathbird. That can be in
the
D all day.
Those things
Dude,
suck.
They're horrible. Rune Bears, like just awful. I never wanted to come across one of those. I'd usually be like, oh, well, I guess I'm just not going in this room then. But like for the most part, you know, some of my worst things that I was having the least amount of fun with, like Placidusax, that was something where I had left the game and then came back. So, you know, I might not have been up to snuff with what I was doing. Whereas, my A tiers, the vast majority of your shard bearers, I think, are an A tier for me. Your S tiers, obviously, the ones that I love the most. I did put Margit up there. I thought that the fire giant was absolutely great. Obviously, Rykard, because together,
Together.
But I think my favorite is probably going to be Margit. Honestly, just because of how much he sort of introduces to the game. Plus, I mean, like, I just love whispering to myself like foul tarnished.
Yeah. Put these foolish ambitions to rest.
That's right, and I have.
Cool. Well, this has been good. We're at about 2 hours going through the bosses in Elden Ring, and if we wanted to be thorough, we have like 70 more bosses to go through, but I think this is enough. These are the bosses that really demand the most discussion, I think. Yeah, so Jim, thanks for going through this tier list with me. This has been fun, dude. Always good to talk to you and good to talk games.
Thanks for having me. Always good to be on here. You run a tight ship.
And thank everybody for listening. If you would like to do this tier list for yourself and share your tier list with us, I will put a link to the Tier Maker website down in the show notes. You can go find that. We'll also be chatting about the tier lists in the Tales from the Backlog, my own show, Discord server. And the Discord server is a great place to come in and talk about games and talk about my other show, A Top 3 Podcast, and all kinds of other life stuff. So if you would like to join the Discord server, we would love to have you. You'll find an invite link down in the show notes. Come on in, talk some Elden Ring, talk some other games, whatever else is going on in your life. We'd love to have you. So if you would like to support Tales from the Backlog, once again, best things to do are to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a 5-star rating and or review on your podcast platform of choice if they allow such things. That's very helpful. And yeah, come in next week. We will be out of Elden Ring month, back into the regular style of the show. Different video games each week, and then the random odd break from the backlog episode. So we're finished with Elden Ring. We'd love to see you for the next game that comes out of the backlog.